Jake Paul is stepping into the ring against Iron Mike Tyson, one of the greatest of all time, on July 20th, 2024. And I honestly don't even know why it's happening at this point, because this fight is just not even fair. Now, from a first glance, most people see this fight and think, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, this should be an easy win. Mike Tyson will run through Jake Paul, the YouTuber. But I don't think it's that simple. Now, don't get me wrong, I want Mike Tyson to win. But I think Jake Paul will beat and potentially hurt Mike Tyson, and it is less to do with Jake Paul than it does with Mike. As you probably know, Mike Tyson is much older than the prime Mike Tyson that most people think of when you hear the name Mike Tyson. Mike is now 57 years old, gonna be 58 years old when he fights Jake in the actual ring, and I just don't have a good feeling about it. Mike Tyson just had a medical scare going into this fight. Not too long ago, a few years ago, he was in a wheelchair, he has sciatica, he has problems, he at one point walked with a cane, and it's not like he's getting any younger since then. Sure, that was a couple years ago, he may have gotten a little bit fitter, but at the end of the day, Mike has been retired for 15 years and hasn't been living that athlete's lifestyle in the gym like the old days, training every single day, grinding. Now he's coming off of pretty much 15 years of drugs, 10 years of weed, 5 years of shrooms, and he's now mellowed out since his crazy fighting days. You could see even in these press conferences with Jake Paul, it's not nearly the same version of Mike Tyson that said he wants to eat Lennox Lewis's children and all the wild stuff he used to say. And while Mike Tyson has probably forgotten more about boxing than Jake Paul might ever know, I don't think his body's going to be able to perform the same. Maybe his mind knows what to do, but his body just won't be able to perform it. We see these clips of Mike Tyson in the gym, in training, and they are so cut up. Every second there's a cut. We haven't even seen like 5 full seconds of one training clip going into this fight. And you gotta think that's probably because they don't want to show what's going on behind the scenes, Mike Tyson being sore. He said it himself a couple years ago, just training had him bedridden for a week. Now imagine that same man 3 years later going into a full training camp for 3 months fighting a 27-year-old man. The cardio, the stamina, the chin is just not going to be the same for Mike Tyson. And while I have all the respect in the world for the legend Mike Tyson, even at the tail end of his career, he was losing to people that shouldn't have even been in the ring with him. Keep in mind, he was only in his 30s when he retired. Now we're 20 years past that point. Jake has still been dedicated to boxing when he hasn't really needed to, coming from that YouTube background. He already had the money, he already had the fame, but he chose to take it to a next level and really pursue boxing. Now, probably the best reference you could find for an older legend who was amazing and talented, heavyweight world champion, going up against a younger guy, is taking a look at when Evander Holyfield fought Vitor Belfort in 2021. Back in the day, Mike Tyson had wars with Holyfield, iconically bit part of his ear, but at the same age Mike will be stepping in the ring at, 58 years old, Evander stepped in with Vitor, who was in his 40s. And while TRT Vitor was obviously juiced up, this was hard to watch as Evander got put down in the first round. He was falling over simply by just throwing a hook. The balance was not there. The ability to take shots weren't there, and just plain and simply, he was not the same guy as he was in his prime. And you gotta have that same worry for Mike Tyson getting in the ring at 58 years old against the younger guy in Jake Paul, who's been dedicated. Mike Tyson has a lifetime of experience in the sweet science, but I still feel like his best hope is really just to catch Jake Paul in those early rounds and just put him down. Make it quick, make it easy. Don't get me wrong, I want that to happen. Not like I'm really hating on Jake Paul, but just that moment of Mike Tyson knocking him out would be insane. But we're really roping in a 58-year-old man who not too long ago was in a wheelchair, walking with a cane, into the boxing ring against Jake Paul, which is just not fun to see. Now, if you remember who I said Jake is fighting at the beginning of the vid, I take that back, because I don't think Jake Paul is going to be fighting Iron Mike Tyson. He's going to be fighting an out of prime Mike Tyson, which is very different. Age is a very real thing in combat sports. They say that father time is undefeated. At this point, it's grandfather time, and I just don't think this fight is going to be fair. We've seen Jake Paul in all of these other fights with older legends from different combat sports, to be fair. He hasn't so far fought a legend in the sport of boxing, but he fought MMA legends like Anderson Silva, one of the greatest strikers of all time in MMA. But at that point, Anderson was still like 46, 47. He was still Anderson Silva. But if that was even Anderson like 10 years prior at 36, it wouldn't have even been a competition between him and Jake Paul, in my opinion. On paper, it's really hard to compare these two, considering Mike Tyson hasn't had a really serious fight in about 15 years. Obviously, Mike is the one with the pedigree, the resume, while you got Jake Paul, who's really raw in boxing. He's 10-1. He's had one loss so far, which happened last year against Tommy Fury, a split decision loss. So far, he's never been knocked out. He hasn't been put to the canvas, but also he hasn't been fighting the highest of level competitions, as most people don't at the beginning of their boxing career. But Jake Paul's one of those guys that his entire career is under that microscope because of his name prior. Since his first fight, he's had eyes on him, while most people really get introduced to most of these guys 15, 20 fights into their careers. He never had any amateur background, not even much fighting experience besides a little bit of wrestling in high school. From a technical aspect, Mike Tyson's style is very athletically based, which especially at his old age, we don't really know how that's going to look. The best we can look back to is his last fight against Roy Jones Jr. in an exhibition, which it didn't feel like they were really going 100% in that fight. And Roy, while being an absolute pound for pound great, was definitely past his prime as well when getting in the ring with Mike. It seems like Jake Paul's been improving. When we saw him against a shorter, stockier guy, kind of the similar build as Mike Tyson and Andre August, who was a professional boxer, I don't know how good he really is. It seemed like he was pretty much in there to lose. He had like one fight in the last 4 years, but Jake Paul showed his jab. That was my main takeaway from that fight. Jake Paul setting up his shots, using that jab, using that lead hand. In that finishing sequence, you can see how Jake Paul sets up that uppercut, using that lead hand to blind Andre August, to set up that right uppercut on the chin, and you can see he's getting better with his timing. He's going to be able to improve more between each fight than your average boxer because of how raw he is and how inexperienced he is compared to someone like Mike Tyson. He still does get caught here and there. Against Andre, he got hit with a couple right hands. In his last fight against Ryan Borland, another journeyman pro boxer, he got hit a little bit in the finishing sequence, which it felt like he just didn't have any respect for Ryan. He just went in there and threw the kitchen sink at him, keeping in mind he's also been getting bigger and bulking up, fighting his last 2 fights at 200 pounds compared to before that, fighting at 185. And now he's going to be putting on even more weight, going up to heavyweight. He says he's walking around 230 to 240 pounds, which is a big frame, especially for a guy like 6 foot tall. He's looking like a football player right now. But Mike is a natural born heavyweight. He's been fighting there his whole life. Since he was like 13 years old, he was a unit. Mike's style is just not going to look the same as it used to when he was in his prime, when he was fighting world champions. When he's fresh, I still do believe that he's going to be dangerous, a lot more dangerous than someone like Evander Holyfield, who I used as an example earlier. Because Mike at least still looks like he's explosive, he has more balance, and just has aged better than Evander as a fighter. Mike took less punishment in his career, but at the end of the day, 58 is 58. But even the ability to recover in a fight is going to be much easier for a younger guy, a 27-year-old compared to a 58-year-old. And I don't think I've ever watched a fight with a 31-year age difference between the competitors. Like, that's literally insane. Especially the fact that this is a professionally licensed fight, even though they're wearing 14-ounce gloves, even though this is 2 minutes, it's going on their records, which is crazy. Unfortunately, I just think it could happen. Mike Tyson could have a loss on his professional boxing record to Jake Paul for the rest of time, and Jake Paul having a win over Mike Tyson. And while I really do hope that Mike finds a way, I just think that Jake Paul gets this one done pretty convincingly. Let me know your thoughts though in the comments down below. My way off on this one. Is Mike Tyson just going to come out there and knock this guy out in 1 round? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Check out this video if you guys want to see my full fight breakdown on Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson.